Red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light.
Well, folks, I must say, get ready to fly for this episode because we're going to some great heights. Because with me today, well, he's undisputed because he is the undisputed British Cruiserweight champion for Revolution Pro Wrestling. Will Kaven, welcome to the show, my friend.
What's up, man? How's it going?
It's an absolute pleasure. Well, but of course, you know, I do have every guest. Every guest has a story. Every story has a beginning. Will, how did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
As a wrestling fan, so I just started watching it on TV, really, when I was probably 12 or so. I was always aware of it because some of my cousins and my friends at school would always watch it, but I never really properly got into it. Until I say about 2012-ish. And then about a year or so later, I was like, oh, I wonder how you actually get into this sort of thing. I had no idea if there was any sort of training about anywhere. And it turns out there was a school 15 minutes from my house in Portsmouth, the Rev Pro school. And the rest is history. Here I am today.
Hey, how convenient. It's just outside your very window. Makes travel easy. You don't have to spend, tons of money on trains because our time for trains ain't the best half the time in this country. So
super easy. Very fortunate to have had the school right where I was. We've had so many trainees that have travelled over the years. We had one guy that came from Guernsey. He used to get a plane every Saturday to come down training to Portsmouth.
Good Lord, man. Dedication there. Dedication. Of course, well, you mentioned watching wrestling on TV, but we've seen wrestling in, this very year evolve with the medium obviously going to streaming. So how do you feel wrestling will continue to evolve with being on streaming rather than on traditional television sets?
Well, everything is going towards streaming now. I think probably within the next decade or so, TV as a whole will probably be dead for everything. As soon as all the sports and that are on streaming, that's the way everything's going. Pretty much every wrestling promotion has its own streaming service now, especially with WWE going to Netflix. You can get all sorts of things. There's Triller TV, Fight TV, RevProOnDemand.com, actually. So many ways to watch wrestling. It's all from streaming now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the evolving of the times. Do you think, obviously, with the availability of streaming, it will make wrestling obviously more accessible? Because most people have Netflix for their shows and documentaries, but it just gives that wider platform. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Streaming is accessible all over the world. There's people, as you say, already have Netflix that might say, hey, let's check out WWE. And they might, a lapsed fan might become a fan again. There might be new fans. And it's the same with all streaming services. Everything's available all over the world now. It's global. It's a global thing, more so than it ever has been before.
Yeah, no, 100% there. Obviously, some people might say, well, there's something that you could lose with wrestling not being on TV is that whole family environment of sitting around the television set. But obviously, it's just an evolution of the times. Do you think there's anything that we missed with wrestling being on televisions?
Anything that we've missed? I don't know. I guess, there is the whole thing of the family sitting around the TV, but my family never sat around the TV and watched wrestling. It was just sort of me, and it still is. That's the way I watch wrestling to this day. I just sort of study it by myself. So for me personally, it doesn't lose anything, but I guess for other people, it might in that way.
Yeah, you never know. But of course, obviously, Netflix, WWE, excellent partnership. It makes it an easier product for us to watch, obviously, on Netflix. But some things aren't available up there. Obviously, WWE has a massive catalog, so some things are sadly not going to be up there. Stuff like ECW, WCW, NXT UK, Evolve, that was on there as well. Is there anything from yourself, Will, that you particularly miss not being available on Netflix?
Well, personally, I only had the WWE Network for a couple of years, when it first came out. Since then, I've just sort of been stinging off my friends' accounts. But pretty much everything, most things, are available on the internet if you're willing to look for them. So for me personally, I can pretty much find whatever I want.
Hey, sail the seven seas, find what you want, bring it on deck, and have a good old time.
Exactly. Right.
That's the way of the internet. Obviously, Will, I say once a fan, always a fan, but you would obviously take the extra step of getting into the squared circle yourself. You mentioned obviously the Revolution Pro School of Training, which is an excellent place. I've had many Revolution Pro wrestlers on this show before singing the praises of the company, and I love it as well. For yourself, what was it obviously like going to the training school? Obviously, had you watched Revolution Pro before? Had you heard about it? Just the story of that, my friend.
No, I hadn't heard about it, actually. I hadn't heard about sort of any independent wrestling or anything outside of WWE, apart from TNA, which is also on the TV over here. No, I hadn't heard of any of that stuff at all until I started training. And then when I got into the training, all the other guys from the school, they were the ones that sort of opened my eyes to everything else. That's when I started watching Japanese wrestling, Mexican wrestling, more UK wrestling. And then the training itself was very, very hard at times, but very, very useful. My trainer was very, very good at teaching the basics. So I've got a very good understanding of that, I feel. And of course, the tutelage of like Andy Quildan as well, who runs Rev Pro. He's a fantastic creative mind. So all of that stuff has come together to make me the wrestler I am today.
A good palette indeed. You've built yourself up and you've done excellent things from that as well. I remember in the past season of the show when I would always ask guests about ring psychology and how that develops and how do you appreciate that in the ring. Obviously for yourself, well, what were some aspects of ring psychology that you had to take on board and think, you know, some people might not focus on that very well, but it's an integral skill to being a professional wrestler?
Yeah, so it's a lot of the little details in wrestling that I've really come to admire over the time. I think a lot of trainees that come in, they all want to learn the moves. You know, they all think that's the most important part, but it's probably the least important part, realistically. Like, it's important to have your stuff that sets you apart, but it's the little details in the wrestling that have always really fascinated me. You know, the things that you might not notice on a first watch of a match, but then when you've watched your favorite match, say, a couple of times over, you'll start to notice little detail, like kind of like music, right? Like your favorite song, if you listen to it a couple of times, maybe you'll start to notice a little beat that you didn't think was there before, but now you've realized it's there, and now it ups your enjoyment of it, right? Like just little details, small things.
It's always the smallest of details, and you know, they're always good things to pick on, build a look and all that. And you know, I've actually seen you wrestle in person, obviously at Rev Pro Anniversary 12, where you would have a great moment, which I'll get into obviously. But first thing I noticed about you was obviously the red hair, the little red. So what's this? Was that just something for wrestling, or you always had that? And it's like, yeah, just rock it.
So basically, when I was about 14 years old, I was just like, fuck it, I'll cut my hair weird. So it's a mohawk essentially, right? Like it's just the middle strip of my hair that grows. There's nothing on this side either. I haven't actually shaved it in a while, but it's just a thin strip. And then I just started growing it out, and I just liked how it looked. Originally I was a big fan of the way Shinsuke Nakamura had his hair, which kind of inspired me to grow out a little bit. But also James Castle, another trainee from Rev Pro, someone who like was kind of a mentor figure to me coming through. And I just always thought it was cool. Like, he had his hair in a very similar way. But I guess I was kind of emulating those sort of things, and it's just stuck. Like, this is my look. It's a unique part of myself. Like, when you see this, you know that's me, you know?
No, absolutely. And it's a great look. Absolutely. Make some great 8x10s, get them sold, signed, make some money in the bank. Boom. Easy sort.
Sure. I need to get on that.
Merch days. Yeah. Obviously, Revolution Pro Wrestling, such an integral company to the UK scene. What was it like, obviously, getting on a card for the first time and, you know, wrestling for the company?
Difficult. Very hard. So my first few matches that I did, actually 9 years ago was my first ever match. They were all on the Rev Pro Contenders shows, the trainee shows. They'd just run in Portsmouth. They never went on the Rev Pro On Demand service. They were kind of separate from the whole thing, just like a little bit of developmental. So that was what I would do for years, essentially, that and just some smaller like campsite shows, until about 2022, when as the last one of those shows we've run, until actually we're running another one on February 8th. But the last time we run that was on 2022. I got to wrestle Michael Oku for the British Cruiserweight Championship, actually. Which at the time was my favourite match I'd ever had. And it was kind of off the back of that, a few months later, that Andy decided to start using me on the main Rev Pro shows. So I think it was probably about 9 years from when I first started training until I would get to a main Rev Pro show. So that was a massive grind for me. Like, that was like, I was going to the shows for years. I was helping out at the shows. I used to film. I've done pretty much all the jobs you can do behind the scenes. So it was like a validation of everything I'd been through so far to first get on those shows.
It's a good validation point. Obviously, you mentioned working behind the scenes, and obviously it's always great to have skills from every sort of field. But obviously, I can imagine for professional wrestling, when you work behind the scenes, you'll know about like camera positions and lighting and obviously and how to make yourself obviously not only just look good but look good for the crowd. Do you think it's always a part of a wrestler's asset to have those backstage knowledge skills?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You have to know where the cameras are. You have to know where you're playing to. I think personally, it's important to get a feel for all aspects of wrestling, just because it helps you understand why. You know, there's nothing wrong with not doing that. Like, I'm sure plenty of wrestlers don't know those things, haven't been in those positions. But for me, I just feel like all those experiences have, again, just come together. You know, it's the conglomeration of all the things I've done that have made me the wrestler I am today. So it's definitely very useful for me.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Obviously, Revolution Pro, led by Andy Quildan, great guy. I love watching interviews of him just talk and how his mindset is presented for professional wrestling, what he thinks about it, what he does for building upon Revolution Pro. What is it that you think Andy brings with his mindset to obviously Revolution Pro, but also the British scene as a general? What do you think he adds to the company?
It's a tough question what he adds to the company. Because Andy Quildan kind of is the company. A lot of people don't understand, I feel. Rev Pro is like a one-man operation. Like, obviously, it's not. Obviously, there's lots of people that have come together to add their expertise in every single area, right? Lots and lots of hardworking people. But at its core, for the last 12 years, Andy Quildan himself does everything. I've done some work in the office with Andy. I travel to shows with Andy in the ring van a lot of the time. I've spent so much time with him over the years. And I've seen firsthand like all the stresses of being a promoter, everything that goes into it. I feel people will be really, really shocked to find out exactly how much happens behind the scenes and exactly how much of it he does by himself. Like, he's a workhorse. He's the workhorse of British wrestling, and people don't understand that. They don't respect that enough. Rev Pro, I think, for me, is also probably the biggest British company out there right now. Obviously, still on the independent level, but look at the exposure that he's given to the scene. He still brings in new talent all the time. He gives everyone feedback behind the scenes. He helps everyone. And that, I feel, is something that flies under the radar a lot of the time. So yeah, Andy Quildan, he is Rev Pro.
Hey, if there was a British Wrestling Hall of Fame, I think the man's well deserved this place in that for what he's done, obviously, not only for Rev Pro, but British wrestling as a whole, because I feel like with Revolution Pro, if you say to an American or somebody else from another country, and you say, what is British wrestling? They'll say, well, it's strong style, but obviously it's places like Revolution Pro that have built that kind of style, obviously with the relationship with New Japan, truly integral part. And what is it about, obviously, Revolution Pro that you think gives that appeal to not only just wrestlers from the States that I've had on that want to come and wrestle, and they obviously mentioned Revolution Pro as a place they want to come. What is it about that really gives the identity of to American wrestlers as such an appealing place to wrestle?
Look at the slogan of the company. It's pro wrestling at its best. That's what everyone calls Rev Pro. That's what it is. You know, Rev Pro is trying to find the right words. It is a sort of a culmination of all the aspects of pro wrestling done to the highest professional degree. I think as far as like in ring quality, you can't really get much better. Like, obviously, there's the big promotions are putting out great stuff all the time, but Rev Pro's product is very, very consistent. Anyone that watches consistently will know. A lot of people just watch the big shows, and that's fine, and they're all fantastic. But even the smaller shows, down to the 229, to the Southampton, to the Sheffield, all those shows we run, it's just very, very consistent across the board. And it's got a buzz about it for that reason, I feel. So it's very, very attractive to any worker that wants to come here, I feel.
Absolutely. And especially, I feel like with the youth of this country as well, when I speak to wrestlers that are like 16, 18, 19, young men and women, and they just want to get to Rev Pro, they say like, oh, my goal is to not only just achieve in my scene, but I want to wrestle for Rev Pro. When you hear that, and obviously you're somebody that's wrestling on these cards and building the company alongside the other men and women of the company, when you know that you have that connection with the youth, is that one of the greatest sense of pride and achievements as a wrestler?
Yes, for sure. For sure. Look at the young talent that are coming up right now. that are really getting a lot of exposure through Rev Pro. People so young as Leon Slater, Leon Cage, Cameron Kai, Harry Milligan, all three of the Flying Bryant brothers, Shane Hooker. I could go on and on and on. I'm definitely missing people. There's so many, and there's young talent in the UK that don't work for Rev Pro as well, that also deserve all the exposure in the world, and you'll probably see them in a Rev Pro ring very soon. There's literally so many to name. The young talent in this country is second to none. Second to none anywhere in the world.
Absolutely, 100%. Obviously, many great names that came through Rev Pro. Well, I'm going to throw the question: who is your Mount Rushmore of Revolution Pro Wrestling? 4 individuals.
That's a good question. Let's see. Okay, so obviously Will Ospreay, Zack Sabre Jr., Michael Oku, and Shah Samuels. That's what I'm going with.
Oh, good 4. I mean, that's a nice wee faction there. I think you should lead that in the future. You know, that could be a good takeover thing. And obviously, I want to talk about probably one of the most crowning moments for you is obviously winning the Undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship, Rev Pro Anniversary 12. I got to attend it. It was my first ever Rev Pro event. I got recommended it by obviously Brett Semtex, who's done stuff for Rev Pro in the past. He's a great guy. And he was like, "Oh, you got to check out Rev Pro. Actually, go to their show." And I was like, "Well, I've interviewed people there. Might as well go see a show. Make the journey from Scotland down south." And it was a fucking excellent show. Really enjoyed it. Everything on there. And I obviously want to talk about the moment of you becoming the Cruiserweight champion. So what was it like, obviously, on that day and then entering the copper box and then walking out as a champion?
Completely surreal. Absolutely surreal in every sense of the word. I've been to the Copper Box Arena a few times before that for Rev Pro's 11th anniversary, New Japan's Royal Quest that was there. Just doing a lot of work again behind the scenes. You can actually see it in the Rev Pro documentary by Graps on Film that was released on YouTube. They did like a little bit about the day of the 12th anniversary, and you can see everyone working hard, doing everything behind the scenes. So that was kind of like what I was doing at the Copper Box, the shows before. So actually getting to wrestle there, not even winning the belt, just getting to wrestle there was absolutely incredible to me. It was the biggest crowd I've ever wrestled in front of. The energy in the room that you could feel from the fucking 4,000 people is absolutely insane. The match I was so happy with. Really great getting to work with all those great guys in that match, all those fantastic wrestlers, being around all those minds, and then actually finally coming to the end of the match and holding the belt up. I couldn't believe it. It was like I said with my first match on a real Rev Pro show, it was like a validation. It's a validation of all the work I've put in. And it still feels like that. It's the greatest honor of my career so far, to be able to hold that belt, like with all the history behind it, people that have won it before, people like Prince Devitt, people like Michael Oku who held it for like 900 days or something like that. It's such an honor for me, and it's still a surreal feeling. I often don't believe it. I often will like look over at the belt just sat on my desk and be like, what is this doing here? Like, how have I gotten myself here?
Hey, hard work pays off, my friend, and well-deserved work indeed. Obviously, I want to talk about that 6-way match because there was obviously a mystery person for that match, which turned out being All Elite Wrestling's Dante Martin. Did you guys like know in advance, or were you just like on the day like, oh, it's Dante? This is gonna be fucking awesome.
I knew a little bit in advance, maybe a week or so, something like that in advance. Yeah, but yeah, he was super cool. Real great to work with him. Real cool guy. Real great talent. Obviously, yeah, just fantastic. And everyone in that match, like I said, ELP instrumental in that. Leon Slater as well. I mentioned earlier. He's one of the smartest. He's got one of the smartest minds for wrestling. I feel like a lot of people don't understand that as well. He's very, very clever. Yeah, all those guys in that match, just it made for an incredible scene to have all those guys there. Like it's a mix that worked like very well.
Yeah, and it's quite iconic as well because obviously Dante AEW, Leon TNA, ELP New Japan, and Neon obviously CML. Like that's like a hell of a combination of like that's history, mate.
For sure. All those promotions kind of coming together for that one match. pretty insane. And again, I just can't believe I was a part of it. You know, I often feel like I don't really deserve to have been a part of it, but just again, absolutely insane. You know.
Hey, you've done it, man. You've done it, and obviously, undisputed British Cruiserweight champion at the time we're recording. You are on day 150 of your reign, so congratulations on that part.
Didn't know that.
Hey, surprising facts. I like to do my research.
I appreciate it.
Hey, no worries, brother. But obviously, that you mentioned the names I've held that belt. Obviously, Prince Devitt, Finn Balor in WWE, Michael Oku, Ospreay, Flash Morgan Webster. So many names have held that belt. For you being champion, what is it that you want to bring to your reign as champion?
I think some stability to the division. I think before I won the belt, it was kind of being like hot potatoed a little bit, you know, like Neon had it for a bit. Jordan Breaks had it. I think he lost it on his first defense to Neon. Leon Slater, I think, also lost it on his first defense to Jordan Breaks. I think so. Connor Mills before that. It was all just like there was a lot of champions in a short space of time, and there wasn't really a clear path for the division or a clear leader. So that's kind of what I want to bring. And there's a lot of, as we said, young guys coming through right now. I've had the pleasure of wrestling a lot of them, the Leon Cage, Nino Bryant, just to name a few. And I think for me to be at the head of that division while it develops, that's what I'd like for the most part. And that's what I think I've tried to do, and that's what I'm going to continue to try and do in 2025.
Hey, good on you there, mate. And obviously, it's interesting because the idea and the art of cruiserweight division is something that we don't really see a lot, you know, especially in the UK. The only ones I can think of are the Rev Pro and a promotion up in Scotland, CPW, have a cruiserweight championship. Not really anything in the States I can think of. Obviously, there was a Cruiserweight Classic, there was 205 Live. Do you think the art of the cruiserweight division is something that's really lost from wrestling in modern era?
I don't think the cruiserweight style is lost in the modern era, because a lot of people are doing that now. Like if you look back on, you know, the WCW cruiserweights, the world of sport wrestling, actually, so much world of sport wrestling, like from the 80s, from the 70s, stuff like that. And in Japan as well from that time. The people that pioneered that style, and obviously Mexico as well, all the people that pioneered that style back then, that's kind of the style that's still being used across the board, even by heavyweights. Like, again, Will Ospreay, for example, someone that very much incorporates the cruiserweight style into his work, but is a heavyweight. So the style, I don't think, is lost at all, but perhaps the idea of the division doesn't really exist maybe outside of Japan or, like you said, a few other promotions such as Rev Pro.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we've obviously mentioned you're on day 150. You know, some people like to customize their championships when you hit monumental reigns. I mean, have you ever thought of maybe a red strap, you know, make it yours?
You know what? I've never actually thought of anything about that, but that's a good idea. Like maybe I'll look into doing something like that, actually, because that is a good idea. I like the idea of that.
Hey, just send the copyright memo. Just give me a little bit of credit. I'll take anything I can. You know, I think that'll look pretty bang tidy, mate. So go for that, indeed. Obviously,
royalties for that one.
I'll get a new suit. The budget's coming in, boys. The budget's coming in. Rev Pro's obviously created great many names. We've gone through many of them, but it's also because of obviously that British identity. You look at Gabe Kidd with Kenny Omega, Zack Sabre Jr., New Japan world champion, Ospreay killing it in AEW, Leon Slater in TNA. What is it about just the British identity that gives off this energy and produces such brilliant professional wrestlers?
Well, look at the history. Wrestling in Britain has always been less so now, but before, like when it was on the telly, it was very much a cultural thing. You know, wrestling in Britain, I think, has always been on a certain level. Like, for example, if you look at other places in the world, like the big places for wrestling, like, you know, the US, Mexico, Japan, places like that, like it's ingrained into the culture, especially in Mexico. And the UK, I think, is also on that level, but I think it's not appreciated as the same by fans. But there's always been a culture for it in the UK, always. Back straight back to the carnival days of the late 1800s, all the way through the 1900s until now. It's always been a cultural thing, and I think there's always going to be people in this country that love wrestling, that have that passion for it, and want to do their best. You know, that's the main thing. I think it's the passion that a lot of the British guys have.
Absolutely, and you see that from every walk. They have that passion and building into not only just the promotions that bring them up in the business, but when they go and do other things in other countries or other promotions, they bring that passion with them. It's an integral part to have that. And you even see it with our fans as well, because we do like our cheeky chants from now and then. We do have a bit of an attitude for that. Has there ever been one maybe British wrestling cheeky chant that stuck with you?
Yeah, actually, there's been a few. I remember at the Rev Pro Global Wars show in Doncaster. This is especially funny because I don't really think most of the crowd there knew who I was when I came out, despite being the champion. But during my match with Cameron Kai, obviously they got the Swerve Strickland chant, like "Whose house, Swerve's house," all that. They started chanting "Whose house, shit house" at me at the whole for that match. And I was actually kind of trying not to laugh during it. That's one that I really, really enjoyed.
Hey, we have our creativity. I mean, it's built within our culture. We try our best from half the time. Obviously, we talked about it a wee bit earlier, but the Rev Pro How to Start a Revolution short documentary was released on the Rev Pro YouTube site. I implore everyone to give it a check. It's amazing just to see that spotlight and that showcase, obviously, on that day. But obviously, a day will be lived in history for yourself, winning that championship. When you see obviously like documentaries giving that showcase to Rev Pro, how do you view documentaries as like that platform to just showcase the company? Is it a form that maybe people really need to pay attention to or inform more of with documentaries?
I absolutely think so. Yes, and you've seen it with a lot of the documentaries that come out about wrestling. WWE had their 24 series, the Dark Side of the Ring, obviously, all fantastic. And now with this Rev Pro documentary as well, there's so many. I think the aspect of the documentary that's really interesting to a lot of the fans is the peeling back the curtain aspect of it. And there's people who argue, how much you should peel back the curtain in wrestling, really. But realistically, kayfabe is dead. And I kind of think that's just like the natural evolution of it. People know what they're watching when they watch wrestling. People have seen MMA. People that watch UFC. People know what wrestling is. It's different to that. It's its own unique thing. It's the most unique form of entertainment and art in the world, in my opinion, right? And I think peeling back the curtain on it a little bit with those documentaries gives people a very interesting insight into how it all works, which I think gives people a greater respect for it as well. Seeing all the hard work that all these people put in to the production of a wrestling show, everything the wrestlers go through leading up to it, that I think enhances the experience for me, just because it shows everyone all the work that's put in, and that's very interesting to a lot of fans that want to see behind the curtain,
No, absolutely. And it's always great to showcase to people that, aren't in the ring, but behind the scenes getting the, the ring attire ready or the production or the lighting. Like they are the unsung heroes of obviously putting on these great promotional shows that everybody loves. Obviously, you mentioned, we've talked about obviously documentaries, and I know recently we've had like Queen of the Ring coming out, which is focused on an NWA wrestler from the 1950s, and the Iron Claw. But I feel like there's a lot of British wrestlers who should get that kind of movie treatment about their careers in life. Is there anyone that you would like to see from the British scene get a movie style autobiography on themselves?
There's certainly a lot of the World of Sport guys that I'd love to see that stuff on. Obviously there's lots of media about Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks and that. But I would love to see, if someone wants to make a biopic of like Mick McManus, for example, like I would love to see some stuff like that. Obviously, all the guys today, they all have their own story to tell. I think there was a documentary released on Will Ospreay recently as well, if I'm not mistaken. That was fantastic. Like you say, everyone's got their own story. But for me personally, the most interesting thing would be a deeper dive on the world of sport wrestling, because that's something that really doesn't get too much attention these days. There's so many talents from back then that I feel like kind of forgotten now that were pioneers of the style.
Yeah, absolutely. They are pioneers. They built everything up, and we are here because of them doing the great things they did in the past. That's what British wrestling's all about. You know, well, it's been a pleasure to have you here on the Soul Session. But of course, before we wrap up, one final question, obviously. You know, AEW New Japan Forbidden Door this year. This is going to be the big show, obviously, the big weekend, a lot of things going on. But I want to propose a little question. You know, the Forbidden Door is always open, as they say. If you could put the Undisputed Cruiserweight champion on a big stage, maybe on the Forbidden Door show, is there any particular wrestler you want a one-on match for that belt?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say it's very wishful thinking that that myself or the belt would appear on that show. It would be incredible for me, obviously. There's so many to name. If I have to pick one off the top of my head, Darby Allin. Darby Allin. Off the top of my head, that's my first. That's the first one that comes to mind. He's incredible, and he's a true cruiserweight. That would be a match that I would like to have.
Oh, mate, I can hear the flu season coming in. All the sickos are going to get off the chump with that kind of match. Oh, you're on the ball, Bill.
That would be for the sickos.
Indeed, brother, indeed. Well, Will, my friend, thank you for coming here on the Soul Session. Of course, folks, if you love what you've heard of the Undisputed Cruiserweight Champion, I will include a link to his Instagram down below. Click it, give him a follow, see his journey as champion. When he brings out that red strap on that belt, you can say you first heard it here. So, and of course, obviously, folks, indeed, check out Revolution Pro On Demand as well. Get to see Will in action, and obviously the great other men and women of the company. Is a great platform. I have it. I love watching it. Well, folks, as I say as a Scot, finish up your pint, put your chairs away, and thank you as always for tuning in for another episode of the Soul Sessions.
Now I'm out there human too. Gonna live like animals do. No more laws and no more rules.